What's happening, everybody? Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, I was reading this story and it really disturbed me, but it gave me even more clarity on, just basically on the country that we live in, man. Like we always talk about like what's going on in our country and what's being done or has been done to black people. And a lot of people look at whether it's the liberals or the conservatives, the Democrats or the Republicans to come and save our community, to come and save our people. And I'm trying to tell you, I've been telling you, and a lot of other people have been telling you over years and decades and decades and decades and decades that is not coming. And it doesn't matter if it's in the form of them giving you what you're just due, your money or whatever, or them withholding money or withholding whatever you owed or you were owed from you. And another case of that has happened in the state of Tennessee with the Tennessee State University, the HBCU, and the state, the government. The government in the state of Tennessee has withheld what is approximately $544 billion from Tennessee State University HBCU, right? Like, this is not me just making up fake news. This is being reported by Channel 5 out of Nashville. And I'm going to read, and Tennessee State is in Nashville. I'm going to read to you this article that was published by Channel 5. And it says, the headline of the article, it says Tennessee could owe TSU $500 million. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Tennessee stole $500 million from TSU. And this is how the article goes. It says, citing years of unpaid land grant matches by the state, a joint committee of legislature discussed the $500 million sum owed to Tennessee State University. According to legislative financial analysts, the state could owe up to $544 billion to the HBCU. When the school was founded, the federal government put both TSU and the University of Tennessee, that's the one in Knoxville, on land grant programs. Tennessee was supposed to match dollar for dollar the money sent by the federal government to fund the school. So think about this. TSU is a university that's probably over 100 years old, right? So over the last 100 years, they have skipped out on paying this HBCU over $500 billion. You know what I can tell you? I know they ain't miss out on University of Tennessee. I know they ain't miss out on paying them their payments, but TSU failed to get their payments over $500 billion, almost $600 billion. It continues on. This is an article. Remember, this is new Channel 5 out of Nashville, a pretty credible source, I'd say. According to Representative Harold Love Jr., the funding should have been 75% for UT and 25% for TSU. That's a hell of a breakdown. It's a crazy breakdown, but hey, we'll take what we can get. Hell, at this point, I bet you University of Tennessee got their 75%, but whatever, because they'd be talking about that, not TSU. However, for decades, and we ain't talking about decades, we're talking about for a century, but keep reading. For decades, funding for TSU was inconsistent. Federal, state, or both never made it to the university. Federal, state, or both never made it to the university. However, there's also another funding ratio that has the dollar amount owed to TSU, $150 million. I don't believe that. I believe it's closer to the 544 that we read earlier. Either way, TSU president, Dr. Glenda Glover, said she believes the state owes money. It says, quote, "We know there's been some past ills among HBCUs across the country when it comes to land grant matches," said Dr. Glover. "So I'm happy that Tennessee is taking the lead in this process because I'm talking to other presidents of land grant institutions in the 1890s. We all have the same problem. Some members of the committee today questioned the funding percentages, stating that they haven't been updated since the program first started," which is absolutely true. It's ridiculous how Tennessee Knoxville, the PWI, is getting 75% of the land grant funding, and TSU, the HBCU, only gets 25%. But hey, that was created in the 1890s, once again, over 100 years ago. And white people weren't giving us equal share. Hell, they ain't gave you nothing over the last 100 years, and you knew you wasn't gonna get equal. You got 25% on paper, but you didn't get nothing in reality. That's why you're owed $500 million. Let's continue reading. The argument that we know what the ratio is that doesn't hold water, said Representative Love. We've been funding these 75-25 from the federal government. TSU sometimes is not getting their money, and TSU is not getting paid a dollar. So, so that's what's happened. And they basically went on to talk about where the money could have, can help and where it would have helped over the last 100 years. Here's the thing. We know that our HBCUs are underfunded, right? We export our greatest asset, or one of our greatest assets, to HBCUs, which is our athletes, that makes hundreds of millions and billions of dollars for places like the University of Tennessee and all these PWIs, but the HBCUs look like trash. I mean, I'm gonna just be honest. I'm gonna be honest to you. So TSU is in Nashville. I live about an hour away from Nashville. So I've been to TSU. I've been to Fisk, which is also in Nashville. I went to like their gyms. I've seen their facilities, and I went to Western Kentucky University, and their facilities at TSU and at Fisk my high school had better facilities than TSU. My high school had better facilities than Fisk. And that's no knock to Fisk and TSU. It's because they're underfunded. They're underfunded, and that is why my high school has better facilities than those universities. So you add the fact that they're already underfunded, right? And then you add the fact that over the last 100 years, you have stolen $500 million from them, $544 million to be exact. Analysts are saying you have stolen $544 million from them. Do you know how far $544 million can carry a university? It was already bad enough that the percentages were 75% University of Knoxville, 25% TSU, which was the HBCU. It was bad enough those were the percentages, but hell, I guess in the 1890s, you'll take what you can get, right? And then you add the fact that you weren't even getting the 25%. You weren't even getting that. It was saying the payments were inconsistent from both the federal and the state level, and sometimes they weren't even made. Inconsistent from the federal and state level, and sometimes they weren't even made. And you still think there is going to be a savior from these people. They won't even fund your education. They won't, the money that they say they owe you, right? That they agreed to pay you. Think about that. Somebody agrees to pay you. Hey, for every $100, I get 75. You get 25. We both doing work. We both are properties of the state, properties of the state of Tennessee. We both are supposed to be equal, but fucking we really ain't equal, right? Like you TSU with all the black kids, and I'm University of Tennessee Knoxville, which we prestigious. But hey, just because we feel sorry for you, we'll give you $25 for every $100 we make, right? Tennessee Knoxville gets 75, y'all get 25. And then it starts going from 75-25, 75-25, 80-20, 80-20, 90-10, 90-10 to 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. No more 25 going on over here for 100 years. 100 years. 100 years. And you think that a Democrat or a Republican is going to save you? They won't even fund your education. The education that they promised to fund in these land grants. $544 billion with a B. $544 billion stolen from TSU. Just flat out stolen. There's no other way to put it. Ain't no you owe them. No, that money was stolen from them because they'll never get that back. They will never get that back. There's no way you can right that wrong. And that is so frustrating. That is so frustrating. And that is why things like what King Randall's doing, obviously that's on a high school level, but being funded without federal government is best. Because even when they promise to give you money or give you something, it's a catch-22. You don't really get it. I'm promising to give you it in a phony fairy tale document. In a phony, I don't care if it was 100 years ago. 75-25 was the agreement, and somewhere along the lines, that agreement ended, and it never was fulfilled. And $544 billion was stolen from a university that needs it, was stolen from our people, was stolen from our people. Were stolen from the people who need it the most. That university, like I said, has facilities that are worse than my high school. And they can't use $544 billion. The state of Tennessee, oh, my bad. We had this blunder. So now it's like, okay, cut the check. Right, where my check at? We got to make. It's not 544 billion. It's 150 billion. That's a big ass difference. Let's be honest. $400 billion is a huge difference. And if I was a betting man, I'd bet that it's definitely that $544 billion bill and not the 150. So that's the first tactic. The first tactic is we're going to try to minimize what the actual number is, right? Like it's really probably $544 billion. But we're going to say it's actually, guys, it's actually closer to $150 billion, but it's not 500. That's too big of a number. It's 150. But at the end of the day, that money was stolen from those young ladies and young men down at TSU University. And it makes me sad because a lot of people have faith in certain institutions. A lot of people have faith in voting. Go vote. This won't happen if you vote. Man, to hell with that. Like, I get it. Yeah, voting is cool. You can vote, whatever. But those people in Tennessee were voting. And they still had $544 billion stolen from them. And this is just one of probably several instances where this took place, right? Like this article just happened to catch my eye and I couldn't believe it, right? Like I couldn't believe like over the course of 100 years, $544 billion was stolen from an HBCU that's struggling because all of them struggling for the most part. An HBCU that has facilities worse than my high school. An HBCU that now is getting a lot of support from like the basketball community because Master P, his son Hersey Miller, has chosen to go to TSU. Robert Covington is funding a practice gym for the athletics, for the basketball team. But that's because he's one in a million. He happened to make the NBA and he's paying for a basketball gym to go to TSU. Once again, we're talking about a school that's severely underfunded, just like most 90% of the HBCUs in the country. Right? Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos' wife, giving all this money to HBCUs. That has nothing to do with the government. But we're talking about $544 billion stolen from this university. And how can that not make you sick? Where's that statement, Joe Biden? Talking about the money that had been stolen from these HBCUs, from the federal government. And I'm supposed to just give up my vote and trust any and everything you say? No, I'm good on that. I'm good on that. I'm gonna try to make a way out of no way and do this my way because your way clearly isn't working. Because even when you think or act like you're gonna do something good for me, you still steal from me. $544 billion over the course of 100 years. How in the hell nobody caught this over 100 years is mind-blowing. But when you're dealing with white supremacy and you're fighting against that, they do a lot of mind-blowing tricks, right? Like over the course of 100 years, nobody went to revisit this land grant document and realized that payments weren't being made or wasn't able to speak up against these payments not being made or that how $544 billion is stolen from you. Nobody's able to go revisit that over the course of 100 years. We're talking about since the 1890s. The 1890s. Nobody was able to go revisit these documents. Nobody didn't realize the checks weren't clearing. Like, where was all that going? Where was this supposed to be taking place? Like I said, when you're in a war against white supremacy, you have to realize that these kind of tactics are being used. They'll use people that look like me and you to steal from you, to steal from your community. Your communities that, in a lot of cases, that don't have anything, right? And they're still trying to take what you don't have. Just imagine how many lives could have been changed if TSU had that extra $544 billion. How many lives could have been changed? How Tennessee State University could have upgraded and could have been in a much better space in 2021 as opposed to they were in the 1890s. I bet you, like I said, University of Knoxville, Tennessee Knoxville didn't miss any payments. University of Tennessee Chattanooga didn't miss no payments. Vanderbilt damn sure wasn't getting no payments missing. Middle Tennessee State. These are all schools in that same area, not just in the state of Tennessee. Besides Chattanooga, Knoxville, Well, Knoxville's out of the way a little bit, but Vanderbilt, MTSU, and Tennessee State University and Fisk are all in the same area. I bet you Fisk, they weren't mentioned in this article, but I bet you anybody that was owed payments, whether it was in the form of land grants or federal funding or state funding from Chattanooga, Tennessee, Knoxville, Middle Tennessee State, those PWIs, they weren't, their checks were clearing. The checks for TSU, the HBCU, got up to $544 billion before somebody realized that money was being stolen from them. And you expect me to go out here and just blindly vote with nothing in return? Even when these people are doing everything they're supposed to be doing, the agreements have already been made, and they can't even get paid on the agreements that were made for them, made by them, for them, by the state, and by the federal government. Come on, man. We got to be smarter than that. We have to be way smarter than that, because Tennessee State University has been robbed over the last 100 years, and they need to cut the check. But if you think that money's going to come, it'll be a cold day in hell before the state of Tennessee gives them back the money that they owe them, that they stole from them. And that's just my thoughts on that. Once again, I'm Jeff Lightsy Jr. at the Black Boss Channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe.